Hello, everybody. Welcome to another broadcast of Freedom and Survival. I'm Tim Wright, and this is one of my channels. I apologize for the flipping back and forth as far as the title slides. I have to make sure that my live streams are actually going out and not freezing, and so that's what that was all about. Well, today is November the 11th, so I'm dating this particular video, although I hope it will contain things in it for you to think about throughout the year or the years to come. And the reason is because we're going to talk about not just about the elections of 2024 for the next 4 years. I want to talk about and this is just me rambling in this video with some references to where do we go from here. So obviously in an election you have winners, and you have losers. And it just seems to me that more and more and more people are more asphyxiated on the individual rather than the end goal. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the end goals are so separated and such a dichotomy between them that the individuals really do represent what our world philosophies are. And I want to talk about that for just a little bit as well, because it just seems to me that there's rather than looking at what we have and what we have to work with as far as goals or end goals in mind, we tend to see things and not necessarily think through them. In other words, as usual, we think about them, but we don't think through them. And so I just want to talk about the elections. I want to talk about the world philosophy, the world view of each of us, and ask ourselves, where are we going to go from here? Where are we going to go from here as a country? And I want to ask some hard questions. I'm going to be upfront with you as to my worldview so that you know up front I'm not playing games with you. I'm not gaslighting you. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything or smooth things over and sneak something in behind from behind that means something entirely different from what is being spoken, which happens a lot in the political arena. If you stop and think about it, words and meanings and definitions over the past 20 years have been changed drastically. I'm going to explain that in just a moment. So, actually, let's just go ahead and do it now. So, what would be? Oh, let's give some examples. So, the term patriot, the term honorable, the term American, not just the United States, but the term American, depending on who is saying it, can mean something entirely different from the individual saying it and the individual hearing it. Or the same thing is true on this side. If one person is saying these things, then it is different than an entirely different meaning than what is being heard over here. And I think that when it comes to our world views, these things are in play 100%. And so it really does pay to pay attention, and it really does pay to understand. And also, I think that the more these things are separated out, the harder it's going to be as a country to be united, because it's clear to me, anyways, that On one end of the equation, the word united means something entirely different than it did in past times as well. And there is clearly one worldview that says we want to be united if it's on our terms. And we don't care about respectful dialogue. We don't care about respectful discourse. We don't care about respectful disagreement. We want what we want because we want it. And it doesn't necessarily make it right, and it doesn't necessarily make it good for the country as a whole. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's get into this whole thing. Before we go there, let's get into this thing about definitions meaning one thing to some people and completely another thing to somebody else. So let's talk about the word honorable. And I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to bring this up and mention it again. I just want to make sure my streams are going out here. So the word honorable, if you were to serve in... Oh boy. I think vMix is messing up again. Could be wrong. If you were to serve honorably in the United States military, that would mean something entirely different than if you were a German in Hitler's time and you served honorably in the German army. Does that not ring a bell to you? Does that not make sense to you? Oh boy. Hang with me. I've got streaming issues galore. And when it comes to uniting, it's the same thing. We only want to unite based on what we want. And so, there we go. And so it is the same across the board. Now, it seems to me that one side would like to unite even though there are differences and disagreements, while the other side does not. Now, reflect on this and ask yourself, after each election cycle, depending on who lost the election and who won the election, who is it that throws fits? Who is it that causes red flags and orchestrates red flags? Who is it that cries like little babies, and who is it just keeps on doing what they keep on doing? That'll tell you a lot right there. Now, let's go into the worldviews for a moment, like I had mentioned, and let's talk about economics and what makes sense and what doesn't. So what I have is, before I do that, I want to tell you, I am a registered Republican from way back when. I haven't changed it, but I don't view myself as a Republican. And the reason is because the Republican Party has turned into nothing more than a neutered marshmallow. Nothing but mush heads. Let me redo my camera here. The Republican Party over the past 20 years has been all but silent. All but silent on issues that matter. And to me, if you're not going to stand for anything, you don't stand for anything. And I'm of the opinion that, right, wrong, or indifferent, you need to stand for something. Let me take this camera here. It seems to be having issues as well. There we go. And so I'm not a Republican. I'm registered Republican. It makes it easy to vote. I'm not a Republican. I'm certainly not a Democrat. And here's where the world philosophies and the world views come into play. And I'm going to explain this in many different examples. So I was talking to one individual, and this individual claims to be a born-again Christian believer in Jesus Christ, and yet they vote Democrat across the board. And the view is, I vote economics first, everything else is secondary. So right and wrong is secondary, morality is secondary, and yet what you say you vote for in economics doesn't even make sense. So if you vote Democrat, and I'm not saying voting Republican is right, because as far as I'm concerned, it's two heads to the same snake. It's two sides to the same coin. But when you look at world philosophies, it's like there really isn't a whole lot of choice. You can't vote for this based on morality and based on economics, though you say you're voting for economics. So if that's the case, where are you going to go from here? And let's explain it. So on the economic side, you say you want to vote for what is strong economics, but on the morality side, you vote for abortion, which clearly is murder. Oh, well, but you don't know all the circumstances. To be frankly honest, I don't need to know the circumstances, because based on what you're telling me, you're a walking contradiction and a hypocrite. Why? Because on the economics, you are taking away a future producer in the economic stream of things on the street, and you're taking away more from the tax base. So economically, you don't make sense. Morally, you're corrupt and wrong, and you're voting for murder no matter what the circumstances are. And economically, it just flat doesn't make sense. So don't tell me that you're going to vote for economics and this other stuff doesn't matter, because they go hand in hand. And if you vote for the morality, the economics follow. And it happens every time. It's a historical fact. And if you vote for the wrong side of morality, you will kill your economics. And I just showed you that. It's really simple. It is not very complicated at all. Furthermore, on the morality side, why are you still walking the planet? Why weren't you the abortion? Oh. That's a very simple question. So, as a people and a country, where are we going to go from here? If you voted for Democrat, are you going to sit in your waller and cry, or are you going to be the person you're supposed to be, and the morality will follow and the economics will follow? I will propose to you that you will not. And I'm just talking on one side. We're going to get to the Republican side in a minute. So don't you think that I'm just picking on you if you voted Democrat. I am not. And don't twist my words. Because there are fallacies on the Republican side as well. And the same question is going to be asked. Where do we go from here? Now, I want to point out the fact that Kamala on one hand, well, let's go back to Biden. Let's talk about economics still. So, if you want to talk about strong economics and a strong country, a strong self-sufficient country, who axed the pipeline in the first 2 weeks of the presidency to where we would be self-sustaining and have a strong economy, as well as feed Canada's economy with workers on both sides of the border? You see, there are some things that just the rhetoric doesn't match the facts. And so if you're going to argue, stop arguing from emotion and start arguing from facts. You can't. That is one fallacy that most Democratic, and not all, but most Democratic voters talk about. And it is either they're based on lies or emotions, and they both follow each other. Now, I want to know where we're going to go from here, how long it's going to last, and why we would ever vote. Say we're voting for economics or women's rights or whatever, when in fact we're voting quite the contrary, because you've bought a lie. And there are a myriad of other issues as well. It seems as though over and over and over again, Democratic leaders destroy our military, just decimate it. And yet we have family members who have military members and continuously vote for the people that would destroy the very essence of the defense of the country they live in. We can take this back when I was in the military, take it back to Clinton. When I got out, Clinton closed down a myriad of bases, a myriad of posts, took away funding like there was no tomorrow. Why? And the philosophy, and you can look this up, it has nothing to do with self-defense of a sovereign nation, the United States of America. It has everything to do with the philosophy of leveling the playing field rather than dominating it on a global, world-class level. In other words, the Democratic philosophy is, if Russia and China and the U.S. are on an equal playing field, nothing will ever happen. And that is a fallacy. That is a fallacy of thinking that will get you in serious trouble. Because you never, ever, ever underestimate the enemy. You never, ever, ever underestimate your opponent. You never, ever, ever assume that while the other guy says they agree with you, that they're actually going to follow through. That is a fallacy. The second aspect of this world view of philosophy and fallacy is the fact that the Democratic Party is no longer the Democratic Party. In fact, it is, in essence, the Communist Party of America in democratic name only. And I showed you that in my video of Follow the Yellow Brick Road, where the Communist Party of America was established by the Russians after World War II to get into our politics, to take us down without a shot being fired. And then that didn't work out so well, so they got into the unions and created a strong foothold as to where they are today. And then they decided that as long as they took on the name the Communist Party of America, that they would not get any more headway in the political system. So they started edging their way into the Democratic Party. And once they did that, they started going from the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. Now let's talk about the fallacy of Democrat versus Republican when it comes to nominations. Democrats, do you not realize that you have a hatred, and actually many do have a hatred for a single man named Donald Trump, and it has nothing to do with the worldview or a sovereign view. And it makes no sense because you bought a lie because Donald Trump is a Democrat. Why would you hate your own? And I'll tell you why. Because he is a true Democrat like JFK. And the Democratic Party is now a communist party. And the Democrats didn't want a Democrat leader. They wanted a communist leader. And that's why you Democrats can't stand Donald J. Trump, who is a Democrat. The same thing with Kennedy Jr. He's a Democrat. So for you to hate a Democrat while you're voting Democrat doesn't make any sense unless you are a communist akin to the communists who have taken over the Democratic Party. And you don't think through things, you just think about things and you think about what you're told to think. So it's time for you to get your head on straight and quit crying about spilt milk and start acting like an American. Where are you going to go from here? Are you going to act like an American, or are you really a communist? I want to know, because I'm going to tell you right now, communism is from the pit of hell. True communism is from the pit of hell. And don't tell me you pray for this nation when you're a communist. Well, I mean, you do, but it isn't doing you a bit of good. Because you can't pray in God's name for a nation when you are praying for something that comes out of the pit of hell. Now, one more aspect to this. If what I just said is true, and it is, and you can do your own research, I don't think you will. Prove me wrong. I don't think you will do your own research because by and large, when it comes to work and economics, Democrats, especially the younger generation, are lazy bottom feeders who want to be spoon-fed everything that they think as well as the money in their pocket. Prove me wrong. And the corporate leaders of the big corporations, they are at the top. They're going to be world players no matter what, so they don't care. They want control. And a communist party in Democrats' clothing gives them the most control. It takes the control out of the people's hands and puts it in their hands. And that's why they vote the way they do. That's why they give their money the way they do. Prove me wrong. Now, if you say that you've been a Republican and you want the old Republican Party back and you miss the Republican Party, and that's why you voted for Kamala and you're voting Democrat, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. If that party is so far gone that you can't stand a Democrat named Donald Trump when you say you want the Republican Party back, the old Republican Party back, but yet you're going to vote Democrat? You don't make any sense. That's just plain asinine. You want your old Republican back, a Republican Party back, one that stands for certain things, but yet you want to hold on to murder and killing. And you say you want to vote for a strong economy, but the party does everything in their power to destroy the economy. You don't make any sense. And you refuse to vote for the person that's a Democrat. Even the Republican Party did not want Donald Trump. It's just a simple win for him because the entire country voted for him. Or a simple win for them. But if you go back to the first time Donald Trump ran as president, or for president and became president, the Republican Party did not want him. Why? Because he is a Democrat. And then you have the whole country who, by and far, at this juncture, is Republican, and they voted for a Democrat who's running in the Republican Party. Remember the yellow brick road? Remember I said the Democrats are going to the Republican side? The Communist Party of America moved into the Democratic Party. They took it over. And then Democrats who either don't align with the communists or want to move the communists into the Republican Party moved to the Republican side. Donald J. Trump is not a Republican. He is a Democrat. So is RF Jr., Kennedy Jr. You people don't make any sense. So where are we going to go as a country from here? Are we going to unite and do what is right, or are we going to simply want what we want? Based on what we want, our emotions, not what is right. Now, I said I'm going to talk about the Republican Party. Do you know what the biggest fallacy in the Republican Party is? Thinking that one person is going to save a country. And thinking that when one person that you get in is going to save a country, you can just go back to sleep because things are going to be the way you want them to be. I hope I'm wrong. If you voted, and I'm not saying, if you voted for Donald Trump, and as a matter of fact, I don't know of anybody that would be a Democrat that voted for Donald Trump. Because right now, 90% of you that did not vote for Donald Trump and you voted Democrat are crying Karens. Prove me wrong. Crying Karens. I mean, out of your mind crying Karens. You're losing it. Now, if you voted Republican and you voted for Donald J. Trump, the question is, where are we going to go from here? Are you going to rely on one person to fix this ailing country? The other fallacy is that you equate Christianity and conservatism. They are not the same thing. And therefore, because you do that, you think the Republican Party is the savior of the world. And the person who wins the election through the Republican Party is the savior of the world. And I'm not saying there's not overlap with things that are right. and things that are wrong. But by and large, over the past 20, 25 years, the Republican Party has not stood on or about anything. You have one or two, and I can name them, Ron Paul and Rand Paul, and those that would support them, consistently stood for the Constitution of the United States. Now, whether they did so from a biblical worldview or not, I don't know, but they did so at least from a conservative worldview. Now, let's talk about the differences between the two. I don't know how many times that I have been in church or around Christians who equate the Republican Party as God's choice. And again, there might be overlap. But being a Christian and being a conservative, while there is overlap, and obviously Christians should lean towards a conservative side. And if they don't, I really do question their walk with God. But that has nothing to do with being a Republican. Period. It has to do with aligning the issues biblically from a Christian worldview, from a biblical worldview. And for Christians to align themselves to the death with a party is foolish. Plain foolish. And it's delusional. It's just as delusional as who you point your finger at. I've had, I'll give you two examples. I've given examples on the other side. I'm going to give you two examples. I had a mechanic who claimed to be both Christian and conservative, three things, and Republican, who would charge me to fix my vehicle with premium parts and put junk parts on my vehicle. Their Christianity, their conservatism, and their Republicanism, as far as I'm concerned, useless. You can be conservative all day long and just be as crooked as a guy that you're pointing your finger at. So don't delude yourself into thinking that the Republican Party is the end all to everything. Where are we going to go from here as a country, as a people, and as individuals? And if you think 4 years is going to fix something and you don't line yourself up correctly, it's going to be a very short 4 years. I've got somebody that I have worked with in the past who would not align with me biblically in their lifestyle, but they are as conservative, if not more conservative, as many in the church. Now, how does that work? And in their conservatism, they actually line up biblically more so than many that claim to be Christians, except for in a certain aspect of their lifestyle. And they're conservative, but they're not Christian. But they do, in the overlap, exemplify many Christian traits. But they would never, ever, ever darken the door of a church. So for you to equate being a Republican and being a Christian as one and the same, in many cases even conservatism, is a fallacy. And it is a very, very, very dangerous mistake to make, particularly for you as an individual, but ultimately as to where we're going from here as a people and a nation. So where are we going to go from here? you know, God says those who, and I understand the context was God says those who bless Israel, he will bless. And I understand the context. So when Israel was moving out of Egypt, God brought them out of Egypt and they were passing through lands. That's the context. But the philosophy has proven true across the ages. And I'm not talking about a blind supporting of Israel either, but a support of Israel and the Jewish people at large, even though they too need to be called out in areas that they are being ungodly. In the sense that they are stubborn and abstinent. And you that are my Jewish friends can take a look at others and say, yeah. And you don't have to blanket support for ungodliness, even though you support your fellow Jewish people. Where are we going to go from here as a country? Can we really unite? You know, there's such a thing as peace at all cost, and everybody compromises every moral fiber in their being. Or are we going to submit ourselves to Almighty God, even if we don't necessarily believe everything that is being taught across the board? Are we going to stand for what is right rather than what we want? If we're not willing to do so, these 4 years are simply an interim to where you better get yourself ready, as I've been saying since 2009, to get yourself ready, because after this, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly. You've got very little time to get your house in order. I would highly suggest you get other streams of income going. You get self-sustainment going. You prepare yourself physically, spiritually, every way imaginable. And don't give me this, I'm just going to trust God. Because if you're just going to live life and not put your hand to the plow, your talk of faith in God and trusting God is as shallow as a mud puddle. You don't understand faith. Biblically, you do not understand faith. Faith obeys. Faith listens, faith sees, and faith obeys. It does not sit idly by, and it is not lazy. And a lot of so-called Christians like to hang their lazy hat on faith. That's not faith. It simply is not. Joseph was told to do something and he did it. Nehemiah was told to do something and he did it. Noah was told to do something and he did it. God didn't do it for him, he provided. God says in Deuteronomy 8, he gives us the ability and the power to create wealth and to create everything else. But you can't be lazy because you won't create squat. And trust without action is not faith. So don't throw that little thing at me. It's not right. Where are we going to go from here, people? I'd like to know your comments. I'd like to see your comments. I'd like to see what you think. And I've not exhausted this topic, but I want to get you to think. And I want you to get you to do research. And I'm not here to blast just one side or the other. I want everybody to think. I want everybody to put on their thinking caps and to get moving. Oftentimes, well, going back to going back to this idea of terms being switched around, and it being Veterans Day today. I'm dating the video again. This being Veterans Day of 2024, oftentimes people will say thank you for your service, and they think that that is the essence of being patriotic. And while being grateful is proper, it's not being patriotic. We've been sold a bill of goods primarily from the people that would take down this country into thinking being patriotic is thanking people for their service. And while it might be a small part of it, being who you're supposed to be, working an honest day's work, giving your all to your own business or your employer while you're at that job, going above the call of duty, and working as a team member, being an honest person, being forthright, telling the truth, looking out for your neighbor, lifting up the downtrodden, scooping up the weak and building up the weak, or encouraging the discouraged. That's being patriotic. Where do we go from here? I would encourage everyone, no matter what side of the election you landed on, to be a people worthy of the patriotism of our military members and everybody else that serves as servants of the people. This country is not a country because of the buildings, the lands, or the asphalt. This country is a country only when we are who we are supposed to be. When we have a strong allegiance to Almighty God for giving us the ability to have what we have and do what we do, and a strong family unit. Again, another fallacy of abortion. Abortion does not make a strong family unit. It destroys it. But being who we're supposed to be will make us the country that we need to be, no matter where we landed on this entire topic. So as individuals, as an individual, don't just think about things as you are told to. Think through them. Do your own research. And if you disagree with somebody, I don't care what side you're on, I don't care what party you think you're affiliated with, have respectful discourse, because once the talking is over, there's only one thing left, and that is war. It doesn't matter what the venue is, it doesn't matter whether it's on the world stage or a local stage. The only thing left is war. And that 99% of the time is not the right answer. And when you have discourse with people that you disagree with, listen to what they're saying. Because you're probably not going to disagree with everything, but just because they're Democrat doesn't mean you have to disagree with everything. And just because they're Republican doesn't mean you have to disagree with everything. Just because they're independent doesn't mean you have to disagree with everything. Listen to what each other is saying and have respectful discourse. Get out of your own little bubble, get out of your tunnel vision, and talk things through. and really base your thoughts on facts. Get it from both sides. Get your information and weigh things out. More importantly, be who you are supposed to be. And for those of you who are Christians and you want to think that the Republican Party is your end all, answer all, you are sorely mistaken. Your end all is Jesus Christ and your walk with God through him. Period. Everything else flows from that. So you need to be studying so that you're not swallowing just everything as well. Well, I think I'm done with my rant for a while. Let me tell you this. While I'm talking here to you, whoops, wrong mouse. I am actually sipping on one of my coffee from one of my coffee mugs that is in my Etsy store. You go to etsy.com/shop/Timotheus Enterprises. And as you can see in the photograph there, I've got jigsaw puzzles in beautiful tins for your coffee tables, cutting boards with my landscape photos, coffee mugs such as this one right here and many others, tumblers, travel mugs, cell phone holders such as this one here for your desks, just a variety of things, a blanket with a landscape photograph on it. Just go over there, check things out, maybe buy something, and we'll keep this thing moving. And I also have some prayer requests in the description below. Pray for Craig, who was in a motorcycle accident. Just a constant 2 or 3 year struggle for Craig. Pray for him. Pray for his income. Pray for his pain. He's in constant pain. Pray for my childhood neighbor, Randall. He's been fighting cancer for a couple years. Pray for him if you don't mind. He's put up such a fight, and he desperately needs our prayers. And with that, I thank you for joining me. This has been Freedom and Survival, where I, Tim Wright, cover self-sustainment and political and worldview and analysis. And this particular episode has been, where do we go from here after this election? I just want you to stop and think things through for a bit. I want you to work on building this country, building up your neighbor, and being who you're supposed to be. And thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.